Time to get started. Apologize for the early start, but the majority leader is bringing us in early. We need to finish up our work on the developmental preschool funding bill, Senate File 19. Then we're going to go to the charter school bill, and then to the bill on the school facilities use fees in that order. I'm going to ask people to be brief and blunt and to the point this morning. This budget session, we run fast and we'll run out of time on things, and I do want to get all our work done. So I don't want to cut you off, but I ask you to be blunt and to the point and brief. And as usual, when testifying, address the chair, don't ramble, and be polite and civil toward everybody, including the people you disagree with on a particular bill. With that, we were sort of in the middle of the developmental preschool funding, and I'm not sure we got all the testimony out of everybody. Is there anybody who's unable? Yes. Mr. DeCaria.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ken DeCaria, Wyoming School Boards Association, and we'd just like to speak in support of this piece of legislation. We've really appreciated the partnerships with the developmental preschools. Mr. Chairman, I know it's a big interest of yours is that kids get on grade level for reading in third grade. Well, if you want kids on grade level, you might want to start a little sooner than kindergarten as far as doing that, and especially with some of the kids that, you know, we're dealing with in these developmental preschools. And Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to read a little bit, and this is from a report from the 2015 recalibration that Picus and Nodden did at the request of the recalibration committee, and just the summary paragraph, and only part of it, but it says, findings from longitudinal studies suggest that Wyoming could experience from a 4 to a 10-fold return on an investment in preschool programming. High-quality, comprehensive preschool programs boost student learning in all levels of school and improve career opportunities and earnings substantially. On a benefit-cost ratio, high-quality, comprehensive preschool programs are solid investments, not only in Wyoming's future children, but also for the future Wyoming economy. And so, Mr. Chairman, I think that, you know, that's there, and there's quite a bibliography, research-based information in there as far as that. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to take any more time. Happy to answer any questions, but we are supportive of this.
Ready? None, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Anybody else on this bill, which is about the developmental preschools, where we're really talking about kids that have difficulties that may lead to special ed in the K-12 system? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Rebecca Hazelton. I'm the director of the Wyoming Women's Foundation. We support this bill, but I'm actually coming to you mostly with the parent perspective today. So my son is 5 years old. When he was 9 months, he was identified by his doctor as being behind in his milestones. So we were referred to our local CDC, and he did qualify for services. And over the last 4 years, he's received OT, PT, cognitive, and speech therapy, as well as having a paraprofessional. He has over 12 therapies a week. And on top of that, we have services that we get for him outside of the CDC. That's just one story. We depend on these passionate, empathetic, and experienced therapists and teachers. These services aren't available otherwise in Wyoming rural towns. We've taken him to Colorado quite a bit for additional services. there's not a market for these services. With the small population, relatively small, 3,300 children accessing these services right now, spread across the state, that doesn't create a market. There are no income requirements to access these services. I know many families that access them and their children graduate or continue throughout their preschool years. It's really important to support this because the years of 0 birth to 5, the child's brain is most receptive to learning and building new neural pathways. And that can lead to more independence in adulthood, their ability to contribute to their communities, their ability to attend school and learn. These years are critical. And that is good for Wyoming, right? If we have kids that are able to attend school and able to graduate high school, that's good for Wyoming. Without this start that the CDCs provide, they don't have as much of a chance of that, right? Parents of children with special needs and that access these special education services are highly involved. And these therapists really provide a service that supports those parents through a journey that frankly is much more involved than a typical child. You may be helping your child do basic things like get dressed when they're 10 years old. And these parents, as well as the children and as well as Wyoming, really deserve these services that will help us all become stronger. So I support this bill. I hope that you will too. Our CDCs need this funding. Thank you.
Let me ask you one. Which CDC, would you mind telling us, are you all using?
Sure. I live in Laramie, and so we access the Laramie Developmental Preschool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. My name is Vanessa Bayless, and I am a registered nurse of about 18 years. My husband is a pastor at a local church here in town. Our son Sawyer is 5 now. At around 18 months old, he was identified as having some autistic traits by his doctor, and they referred us to Stride here in town. And as you can imagine, for a first-time mom, it is very scary to find out that your child might have some kind of disability. And so I, of course, went down a lot of different rabbit holes. But by the time Stride came to our home for the evaluation, they were able to evaluate him and to talk with us. And of course, they wouldn't be able to predict the future for us. But what they were able to do for us and for hundreds of other families just like us is that they were able to give us hope. They gave us hope that he had a bright and wonderful future ahead of him. And from the kind and knowledgeable speech therapists, the occupational therapists, teachers, the paras, everyone, they were extremely welcoming and kind to us. Sawyer did end up going from the Part C in-home services to Part B, where he would go to preschool at Stride, and his speech, his behaviors, his motor skills all improved drastically while he was there. The guidance and the resources that Stride provided to us were so valuable and critical to his ongoing development. Sawyer is now in kindergarten at Alta Vista, and he is doing very, very well. He is still autistic. He still needs help, but he is doing so very well in his class. And I know that that wouldn't have been possible if it wouldn't have been for the early intervention that Stride provided. Our children need early intervention. Our children need Stride and centers such as Stride. We were fortunate to get Sawyer started with Stride when he was just 2 years old. But if Stride is forced to close its doors, how many of these children will fall through the cracks? Up until recently, Stride served approximately 600 children per year. If they're forced to close their doors, I fear that what would happen to these children if they are put into the already overburdened school system? Without early intervention, this could be disastrous. If the funding structure in Wyoming does not undergo a drastic change, families just like mine will struggle to find the right support and resources, if any, for their children. Private in-home therapy is very costly and not always covered by insurance. Please consider supporting this bill so that Stride can continue providing our children with the exceptional care and resources that they always have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Anybody else? Clancy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name's Cindy Delancey, and I testify before you in my individual capacity today. I'm really here to testify on another bill, but I'm so compelled by the testimony of others that I felt like I needed to pile on. My testimony is going to be pretty much the same of what you've heard already, so I'll keep it brief. But when I was pregnant with my second child, Bo, I was the Carbon County attorney. Bo was born. I knew something maybe was a little bit different about Bo than my other child, Reagan. And I kept being told like, oh, boys and girls are different and don't worry, you know, everything will be fine. And they're just different. He just needs a little time. Well, I stuck with my mom gut and I knew something was not right. And so I reached out to the developmental preschool in Saratoga at the time. That's where he was going. And they gave him an assessment. And just like some of the other folks you've heard, my son was identified at a young age with autistic tendencies. So of course, my family, we did what any family would do. We looked to see what resources were available, and there were not many. So we contemplated, you know, moving out of state. We contemplated relocating, and at that time I resigned my office as the Carbon County attorney to move to Cheyenne because I had been notified about the program called Stride. I absolutely give all the credit to my son's success to that time spent at Stride. They were completely committed to him, as they were every other child in the classroom. I'm glad to report, fast forward, you know, I'm old now. He's 18, he's a senior, you know, but he's driving, he has a job, he's thinking about college. I mean, he is just flourished. And had it not been for that time when the window was open to be able to help him and to, you know, get him the services that he needed here locally. We didn't want to move to Colorado. We didn't want to move to Utah, but we considered that because of the resources that were available. We were able to stay right here in Cheyenne because of this program. And I know funding's tight, but I really look at these types of early interventions as cost savers. If we can step in when that window's open, we're saving perhaps a payment of a jail cell for a lifetime on the back end, or worse, you know, just other kinds of things that people that get, you know, maybe not the services they need can fall down the wrong path. And to be able to get these folks that need these services on the right track early with love, support, and care can perhaps be a huge cost saver on the back end. So with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I deeply ask you on a personal level to really move this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure in the bill?
Bill. Second.
Bill's moved. We've got one amendment to consider. It's been distributed. I think you all have it. And are there copies out for the audience?
Mr. Chairman, they were outside by the sign-in sheet.
Okay. What this does, this program is a little unusual. There's a formula, there's a specific dollar target in the statute, and the bill updates that. That has two purposes. One, to be the objective in terms of funding right away, but that gets out of date gradually. And that's what's happened. And the second is to facilitate the distribution of funds to the child development centers after we've done appropriating. They have to get distributed to the individual centers. And the appropriation is very likely to be different than what the amount that's shown in the statute. So what the amendment does is say, we'll calculate, essentially, we'll calculate what each center would have gotten on the formula, and then we'll have a percentage that they actually get, which will vary from being a bit below to a bit above as inflation sets in and the figure in the statute gets out of date. We maybe should have removed the figure in the statute initially, but we didn't choose to do that in the joint committee. So the amendment just provides for that kind of process. Is the health department here? Yes, ma'am. Have you seen the amendment? Okay, well, pay attention to it, because if it fouls up what you do, you'll have to take that probably to the House committee if we pass it. Okay. Committee, I'll move the amendment. I think it'll make this easier to get the bill all the way passed. Okay, discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Committee, anything else? Any comments on the bill? With that, is it been a due pass motion? Will you call, LSO, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Chairman, for Senate File 19, developmental preschool funding as amended, Senator Beitman? Aye. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss?
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz?
Aye.
Chairman Scott?
Aye.
5 ayes.
5 ayes, that carried. Next bill for our consideration is the charter school amendments. And LSO, if we have people online, we'll take their public testimony last, and remind me if we do. We did on the previous bill, we had that testimony the other day.
Mr. Chairman, you don't have anybody online today.
Okay. Charter school amendments, Senator Driscoll, this is your bill. You're on.
Chairman Scott, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to present Senate File 61. I'm actually not going to do most of the presentation. We've got people at Department of Education that are probably better versed to answer the questions and do a big part of it. But my little intro, and I'll try to be as quick as we can, the time's fairly valuable, is this is just the latest in getting our charter school rules. You know, we're in a second or third time, most of you have been here, getting updated to make them the most functional we can as a overall system. We've got 2 online and another one coming, and we're trying to get it where it runs as efficiently as we can and does as good a job of educating kids as best we can. And with that, I'd ask for the Department of Education people to come up and actually walk you through the bill and what it does, if they would. Thank you, friend.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Dickie Shaner, Department of Education. This bill is really doing just 2 things. The first is it's allowing the state authorized charter school to elect to be its own LEA, and I'll explain what that means. And then the second piece is it's just providing clarity and certainty around when the state authorized charter school is going to get its foundation money from the district that it's resident in. And I'll explain that a little bit more too. So the first piece with LEA, that's a federal designation. It's local education agency. 9 times out of 10, that means a standard school district. When this bill was first drafted several years ago, it made the schools themselves their own LEA. After deliberations and talking with other states, we ultimately decided to make the state charter authorizer board the LEA, and the schools were within that LEA. Now that we've stood up the state board, we have 2 schools open, we've realized it's a better fit to have the schools be their own LEA in Wyoming. And that's primarily because the states where the state charter authorizer is the LEA, they have a much larger agency like Colorado or Nevada. And we just don't see Wyoming getting to that point where we have a fully staffed state agency overseeing state authorized charter schools. So allowing them to be their own LEA will enable them to access federal funding easier and have more autonomy and flexibility with their schools. So that's just a practical reality of how we set this system up. And that it makes more sense to have them be their own LEA for purposes of federal funding. The second piece is around certainty for the school foundation money coming through. That provision in this bill will make sure that the state authorized charter, when the district that it resides in gets its school foundation guarantee, which is 10 payments from August through May, that the charter school will get that money when the school district does. And it's split up. It starts at like 15% of their guarantee, and then it's like 9 payments all the way through to get to 100%. So that's what the second provision does. And that's the extent of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for either the sponsor or the? Let me ask a couple. The change in the LAA status, because I remember it came in, the bill came in with the LAA status the way this proposal. Did that happen in the Senate or the House, or does it make any?
Mr. Chairman, I don't recall which chamber those changes happened. I do remember being involved in the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, it was done when we did the yellow copy of the bill on the other side. When we did the yellow copy of the bill on the other side, we actually rewrote the Senate version pretty much when it went over across the other side. And we did several substantial changes in the bill, and you'll see more come, I believe, over time that were fixes that they thought protected them, and they actually, we're going to end up going back to doing, the original bill was actually a very good bill that you helped us with, sir.
Okay, so second, I see that you've got it set so that the district and the charter school can agree to an alternate payment schedule. And I know in my district, the attitude of the district has been pretty cooperative, and they may well do that sort of thing. Elsewhere, that may or may not be the case. Senator Ruffus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a little curious on page 2, the may, any charter school authorized to operate under this article may act as a local education agency. And Mr. Shaner, I heard you say opt to. So I guess the question is if they choose not to act in capacity as an LEA, does that still leave the Charter Authorization Board as their LEA for these schools?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Senator Rothfuss, that's my understanding, and we would operate how we're operating now, where we enter into an MOU or some agreement and pass through the federal funds, and it's just a little more cumbersome, but still possible.
Mr. Chairman, follow up on that. The concern or question I have is just how this is statutorily constructed, because Section 3 of the bill has a repealer on that Romanet 6, which is the statutory authority for the charter board, the state authorizing charter board to act as an LEA. So you're repealing the authority for it to act in that capacity, and then we've got a may clause, and so I don't know how that works.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Senator Rothfuss, that's a good point. We need to reconcile that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Should we change the may to a shall, or should we say they may act as an LEA, or negotiate an agreement for the local school district to act as an LEA on their behalf? Which way should we do it?
Mr. Chairman, I think allowing either the state charter authorizer to be the LEA or the state authorized charter school to be the LEA is probably the best. I don't see a partnership with the local school district, since they opted not to be authorized by them, to be a real popular option.
Okay.
I think it would be state or the school, but I mean, I suppose it wouldn't hurt either to leave that option open.
Committee, I would suggest, and I would ask sponsor and the State Department, that the best way to fix this is to either say shall or use the may, because they may choose not to deal with the feds. But one of the two.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say, somebody has to be an LEA for
Okay.
any school, so you need
Need
you need somebody to be designated in
Okay.
that capacity.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. My preference would be that we allow the greatest flexibility. Let's say, put both terms in there. That allows it where if they really don't, if you get in a really small school district, they may want to have the LEA go back the way it is, and others may want it the other way. And from the start, and always legislating, is try to give the greatest amount of local control that we can to it. And this gives them some flexibility, if you would consider that.
So I'm unclear. Do you think we should leave the language in the bill the way it is right now? Or do you think we should give them an additional option? I'm a little unclear what.
Mr. Chairman, with repealer, I don't think we can leave it exactly the way it is right now. It would have to state, they basically make a pick. They can either do it themselves or, and it would probably go from a may to an or. They can choose to go with the state, or they can do it the other way. And that allows them both of them, and we still fit within the repealer. Does that sound acceptable?
Mr. Chairman, my inclination would be to not have the repealer and to draw in the statute that is being repealed and amend it slightly so that it allows the flexibility. And the statute could probably be, I mean, I'm looking at it, I think the insertion of maybe 2 words probably gets you to a point where it achieves the president's interests.
Okay. Okay, we'll hold that under advisement. That may cause me to ask that we get an amendment prepared over the weekend, and we'll vote on it on Monday. But we'll try to complete the testimony on the bill today and be at the point where we can get it out first thing Monday morning. Okay? Any other questions for these gentlemen? Thank you very much. Anybody else want to testify on this bill? Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. Just wanted to speak very specifically to the issue that you were talking about just now. When this says any charter authorized under this article, Article 3 has both state authorized charters and local district authorized charters. So please be aware that if you're saying shall, then you're taking potentially a locally district authorized charter and saying it shall be its own LEA. So you want to be careful of that mandatory language.
Okay, so we, if I
Flexibility.
may interrupt, we then, with that, we need to draw the amendment so that it can be the local district, it can be the charter school, or it can be the state authorizing board if they were authorized by that.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Is that, Senator Ruffus?
And Mr. Chairman, the language as currently constructed on the A paragraph has no problem with that conflict with the may there, because there's express authority for the school district to be acting as the LEA on behalf of a locally authorized charter school. Although this would extend, as I read it, the capacity for a charter school to opt to be an LEA instead of it being their local district's LEA. So the existing charter schools would have the same flexibility. That's how I read it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think there are complexities when it comes to locally authorized charters. However, the locally authorized charter the charter is essentially an agreement between the district and the school. And so if that charter speaks to the nature of the relationship, it speaks to, we will be a school of 12 Sleep County School District number 45, then the charter is going to specify that relationship. But because we are also talking about locally authorized charters, there's also a small tweak to the language a little bit later in the bill that we would suggest. But prior to that small tweak, I think it makes sense to hear about why we might want to make a small tweak on page 3, at probably line 9. And I think for that context, Mr. Ciccarelli will talk a little bit about the relationship between Laramie County School District number 1 and one of their already authorized charters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jed Ciccarelli, Chief Financial Officer for Laramie County School District 1. Just to emphasize our support of the flexibility of a school district to work with a charter school to designate them as an LEA, our district would support working with our charter schools for purposes of federal grants and IDEA. And certainly in an effort to be brief, I won't belabor that other than just expressing our support with that flexibility. Mr. Chairman, specific to our school district, we're a bit unique in that, to the best of my knowledge, we will be the only school district that has both locally board-approved charters and a state-approved charter here shortly. Now, the payments to the charters are a little bit more nuanced. And I would tell you that certainly for purposes of payments to both the state-approved charters and our locally approved charters, they're considered a vendor. We go through the same process to ensure that we have perjury statements, that we present the payments to our board for review when those payments exceed the $500 warrant requirement for review by our local boards. And those payments are processed through our AP department or accounts payable department. And we would see that to be consistent between either a state or our current locally approved charters. Now, just a quick note with regards to the state-approved charters, understanding that the intent here is to make sure that they receive their resources in a timely manner. We anticipate that we can turn around those payments very quickly to the state-approved charters, conditioned on if they accept electronic funds transfers, or if they're using a charter school management company that might be out of state and they require a check, it's going to take some time. Now, again, specific to the AP process, our district is large. We process AP transactions every day, sometimes multiple times a day. There are some school districts that might only process AP once a week or every 2 weeks, and certainly it would require some alteration in their processes to generate payments within a certain time frame after they're received by the state. And finally, Mr. Chairman, just to talk a little bit about the nuances with our district-approved charters. Our agreement with our 2 charter schools follows the state's payment schedule very closely. Now, there are a few things that we work with our charter school to provide additional services for, things like transportation, special education, nutrition services, and other. In an effort to be efficient, what we do is we calculate the payments back to the district at the time we generate payment to them and essentially net it out of those payments, and that takes some time. And with that, Mr. Chairman, in an effort to keep this brief, it also requires us to ensure that we're properly reporting to the state the information that's required of those charter schools to generate payments. We have a great longstanding relationship with our charter schools, but there have been instances that we've utilized our contract with them to withhold our payments in order to ensure that we're receiving the data that we need to be in compliant with the State Department of Education. So what we would ask, and as Mr. Farmer alluded to here, is if the language of an alternative schedule would cover those specific terms that we as a district have with our locally approved charter, to be able to work and continue those terms, we would ask for your, favorable review of an modification to that language.
And so, Mr. Chairman, if I could, because there is already that relationship, the charter agreement between PODER and Laramie County School District Number 1 already spells out the terms under which payment is made. It says, we're going to owe you, you're going to owe us, let's just net out the difference, and then you get paid. So that is not necessarily an alternative schedule. But if we added the word "or terms" after schedule, so, or in accordance with an alternative schedule or terms agreed to by the school district and charter school, we believe that very small amendment would account for the already existing agreement between Laramie 1 and PODER as to how their payment works out.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Carrie Klein with the Wyoming Public Charter Schools Association. I was just going to make a couple of comments on some of the questions that you had earlier. And first of all, I wanted to echo the testimony of Mr. Farmer. Appreciate the district testimony and trying to work this out for the existing charter schools. Our intent all along was to allow flexibility for those charters that are already in district relationships and not to cause them to have to make changes that they're not choosing to do. So looking at the amendment that they just suggested, we'd be fine with that. I think that gets everyone where they need to be. And then I would just echo on the conversation between Shell and May, and the intent all along was to give the most flexibility to charters and be conscious and sensitive to the state authorizing board and their staff and where they are at this point in time, and to provide the charter schools themselves to be LEA for those federal funding and have that flow go directly through the Department of Education and them, the accountability there too. So thank you for your work on this and happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? Delancey.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Cindy Delancey. I'm here as a board member of the State Charter Authorizing Board. Our board has not had the opportunity to meet since the bill has arrived, so we don't have official board position on this matter, but since I'm here locally, I wanted to just chime in with my own perspective as a member of the board. I greatly feel that we're on the right track here. Standing up this board certainly was not the intent to grow another layer of government to staff up, a board, but we simply just do not have the capacity as the board that we are to take on such an important responsibility as an LEA. And so we really are, I feel that, this bill has set us up maybe with some of the minor adjustments that have been suggested by others, Mr. Chairman. I fully support that. But, you just don't know something until you're actually behind the wheel and give it a try. So this is a little bit of a cleanup, sort of, we've learned now we can come back and really do what's best to maximize flexibility to accommodate all of the charters that are existing, as well as potentially, hopefully, future more. So I ask for your support on this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, that'll close public testimony. Committee, I think we've got to the point where we understand we want an amendment on this language that gives maximum flexibility, that does get the authorizing board out of the business of doing the LEA if possible. What I'm looking for is a volunteer to get that amendment drafted and ready to go for us first thing Monday morning.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll go take care of that.
Okay, appreciate that. With that, we'll lay this back. It will be the first bill Monday morning. We will not take any more public testimony. We'll act on the amendment and then act on the bill. And I don't think that'll take enough time to disrupt the rest of the schedule Monday morning. With that, we will go to the school facilities use fees bill, Senate File 84. Senator Brennan, you want to lead us off on that one?
No, you want me here or there?
It's up to you.
I'll go down there.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Scott and members of the committee. What we have today, what I bring to you is Senate File 84 for your consideration, which is the school facilities use fee bill. This bill came about because in our district, we've had a lot of sports clubs that have had a hard time having access to the school's facilities to use their gyms and pools and whatnot in order to practice for their clubs and not really having another place in town to go practice. It got to the point where the swim club has actually had to sue the school district to be able to use the facilities without being priced out. This is a fairly simple bill. This bill just directs that the school districts within each state just basically make a good rental fee. You'll see that we should not exceed the direct instrumental cost incurred by the district for the specific use of the property. B, that would be supported by an itemized statement of the district's direct instrumental cost for the specific use of the property, and then be uniform for the same or similar use of the property. I also will propose an amendment to the bill to deal with insurance, which has also been a problem. So, any questions?
Any questions, committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Anyone here present want to testify on this bill? We'll ask the school district to testify. Well, if they're here, we'll ask the State Department of Education if it cares to testify. Okay, you don't? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, hi, my name is Joe Melcheski. I live here in Cheyenne. I'm a volunteer youth basketball coach for the junior tribe basketball team. I have a group of sixth graders. Know a lot of coaches in town, and this is a significant problem for a lot of us. I want to talk a little bit about the fee structure because that's one of the things that this bill addresses. So in our school district, it starts at $12.50 an hour to rent a gym, but then they have the ability to layer on additional fees. They have administrative fees, custodial fees, key deposits. They have a number of things that they can stack on there. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And you can end up paying 30, 40, 50 bucks an hour to rent a gym. For a football field, it's even worse. The football field rental fees can be up to 250 bucks an hour. My son was going through that this early fall. The insurance piece is the one that's really tough because lots of us are just volunteers. We coach our kids. And the school districts, almost all of them, I checked last night, Natrona, Laramie, Sheridan, everything I could find. They require $1 million in indemnity coverage just to apply to rent the gym. And they want the school district to be specifically indemnified within those policies. So if you go out on the market to try to buy indemnity coverage, it's, you know, $500 to $1,000 a year in premiums. Lots of coaches don't even try to do that because it's not worth the hassle. I think probably, as you all know, Wyoming statute already indemnifies schools. They're capped. Any claim against them is capped at less than $500,000. So that piece is totally unnecessary, and that would be really good to get fixed up in the bill. One last thing on the fees is it is possible for schools to not charge anything. When I was pulling the application fees, Natrona County School District does not charge nonprofits to rent out their gym space. And for a long time, Cheyenne didn't do that either. and things worked fine. So there is a path where they just let these youth groups in to practice for free, and it didn't hurt anything. So appreciate you looking at this bill. I hope you'll move it forward.
Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. Who wants to be next? Who wants to be next?
Mr. Chairman, Boyd Brown, Wyoming School Boards Association. Just want to give you a different perspective. Really think that this is a local control issue and that school districts need to be able to deal with it themselves. I will tell you, with the 48 districts that we have out there, you have one district that has a rec center in their schools. There are agreements between school districts, cities, counties, University of Wyoming, community colleges, where they have memorandums of understandings or other things that they're doing to work with each one of those entities. Some of them are in kind, some of them have payments, some of them don't. But I think trying to unify everything in a bill, I think if you want to say something that you might pass a bill that says that they need to have a structure or a policy regarding that, but trying to do the same thing for every district across the state, I think is very difficult. And with that, I'm going to give you time back and I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, I do have a question on the insurance because this is something that comes up a lot. You know, we keep revisiting the government claims immunity in statute. We try and strengthen that to make sure that it protects institutions for just these types of purposes. And then attorneys in districts, attorneys at the university, attorneys at every state entity, attorneys in cities, all decide, no, we need additional insurance. This won't do. How do we stop that? How do we get to the point where everybody doesn't have to keep paying for layered insurance when we know that, you know, that the act is intended to prevent that waste of funds?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Office, I don't have a good answer for that, and I am an amateur attorney at best. So I guess I would tell you, I've been on this side where you try to do the best that you can there, but then as a school superintendent in 3 districts, and your local representation usually tells you that you want to be covered somehow whenever you're allowing other people to use your facilities. So I guess that's a short answer to say, if we could fix it, I think school districts would be happy about that as well.
Mr. Chairman, a quick follow-up, and it looks like Mr. Farmer is going to weigh in on this as well, and I appreciate that because I do want to understand this more. This is something that is just a common challenge at every level of government where there is a disbelief that they have any coverage. And again, if you've got a school facility that you're willing to run students through all day long, it seems like it's good to go in terms of being appropriate and safe for the public, which to a large degree is why if there's not negligence, direct negligence, then there's going to be an institutional protection, as I understand it. And if that's not accurate, we need to fix that because everybody wants that to be true. It's a colossal waste of money for us to keep having to insure and indemnify and be forbidden from participating. You know, you can't, everyone here in the entire room has probably heard, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that because there's liability risks. To which I usually respond, there's not. And they say, but our attorneys have advised us that there are. So it's a bigger problem than this, but this is trying to get at that.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Office, I agree. And I'll turn it over to somebody who has a little more legal knowledge than I do.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just answer the question. The problem with insurance and insurance law and governmental immunity, indemnification is complex. The biggest problem is that when a district does not specifically claim its governmental immunities, then those are waived. So by insuring against things that are already provided for under that governmental immunity, then those are construed as being waived. So you've heard before about the School Risk Retention Program, a joint powers board that provides for insurance coverages. One of the ways that program is so effective is it utilizes the immunities that exist. It utilizes those governmental claims as part of its defense in claims made against it. However, if a district hires a commercial insurer, say Zurich is a large insurance company that insures entities like school districts, they do not utilize the governmental immunity and therefore are required to provide that coverage and that indemnification because their policy is not written specifically to take advantage of the governmental immunity. That's an entity that operates across multiple states, operates nationally, and so they don't get into the specifics of state to state to state law. And you really just don't have a Wyoming insurance entity that is large enough to provide that kind of coverage. So if your school district is not a part of the school risk retention program, you have a commercial provider, that commercial provider is going to require that if the school district allows other use of the facility, that the school district be indemnified or the school district risks its own coverage. So it is incredibly complex. Basically, your insurance company is now holding you hostage as the school district, saying, if you don't get indemnification from other users, then we're going to invalidate your insurance policy. And so it is a complex and difficult issue.
The proposed amendment, if enforced, or will be enforced, has a provision that reads, not require person or entity renting the facility to obtain an insurance policy for rental use of the property. If we put that prohibition in there, am I right in thinking that will essentially prevent the district from requiring additional insurance and make them fall back on their own protection?
Mr. Chairman, actually, it would probably have the effect of not allowing the school district to allow that use. If let's say school district A has a carrier that says you must get indemnification for other use, and then the state statute says you cannot require indemnification, then the school district is put in the position that they're going to have to choose between having insurance or allowing other use of the facility.
Are they going to be put that way, or are we going to force them to essentially join the state pool?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I would be able to answer what alternatives would be available to them. I would tell you that for many of the districts who are not a part of that program, their current carriers do require that. I can't tell you whether or not that program requires it or not either, because that is a common practice. The city of Cheyenne requires indemnification policies if you want to use a city facility. The county of Laramie County, if you want to rent the Archer facility, is going to require you to get an indemnification policy to use the county facility. It is just an industry practice, and so I don't know what would happen if you say you cannot require the insurance. Again, I believe that districts would be in the position of saying we then cannot allow that use of entities because we cannot meet the insurance requirement.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Ruffins.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Well, the business model there makes a lot of sense, right? If you're a large insurance provider, requiring additional insurance provision is pretty much the way you want to roll. So that makes good sense. The challenge is what can we do about it? I don't know that we can fix it in this particular bill, but I guess I would ask that if there's any thoughts that Mr. Farmer has at this point in time, which might not be during this legislative session, but this seems like a much larger problem for us to address, to try and rein in and help our school districts, but probably as well as our municipalities and counties in how they engage with insurance so that we can effectively use the Government Claims Act as it's intended to be used. So do you have any preliminary thoughts, Mr. Farmer?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say it would be a welcome discussion. I think schools, local governments of any type, cities, counties, any governmental entity that wants to allow the use of its facilities would probably like to get out from having that requirement. So that would be a welcome discussion.
One more quick question, Mr. Chairman. And I know we don't have insurance in the funding model, but what does the district pay for insurance? When you were paying insurance, what were you paying?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ruffins, in the 3 different districts that I was at, it was based on different situations, and it depended on whether you were working with the pool or whether you were working with an individual insurance company. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I would be happy to go and find out, at least in the 3 districts that I was in, what it's costing at this point.
Thank you. Maybe Jed can tell us off the top of his head.
Okay, Senator Steinmetz, and then we're going to come back to you.
All right. My question is just with regard to use. So if, for example, you have a swimming pool that's being used for swimming and you're not changing it from swimming, then why does it matter who is using it? Because the use is still the same. That's question number 1. And then question number 2 is, for example, if you're using a rodeo facility, we have a state statute that says you ride at your own risk, basically, that it's your personal insurance or something else that's going to cover you if you get harmed. Would that possibly be an option for this if you're using a facility outside of, the education provided that it's a nonprofit or someone else coming in? It's a kind of a type of a statute that says you ride at your own risk for something like that, and they assume the risk without having to have a policy. So those would be my 2 questions.
Mr. Chairman, 2 good questions. The first question with regard to why does it matter who? Again, that's part of the insurance industry practice is they have written a policy to protect the school district. They've not written the policy to protect any other user. And so if I have a policy that protects something that's the agreement between me and my insurer, if there is an additional user, there is oftentimes going to be additional cost. It's part of the calculation that the insurer creates when establishing their risk threshold. So it would be nice if it were simple, but our experience has been that different users create different costs. The best example might be you have the exact same school district, but if you add another facility, another building, nothing is any different. Let's say you have a bus garage, bus barn, and you add a little secondary bus garage there. That additional piece, whether it's additional user, additional facility, additional whatever, then changes or creates an additional risk. And so the insurer is saying, I'm going to recalculate what you owe based on the additional risk. However, your question about if we had a state statute that kind of managed that risk, that put boundaries around the risk and said, use at your own risk, then those limitation on risks would certainly then tell the insurer, here is your limitation of risk, and this is the only parameter for you to calculate your premium when establishing risk. Of course, then you have all of the plaintiff attorneys on the other side that are going to be saying, but I need to have recovery or protection for my person. So it invites an argument, but it could be a very good solution.
Okay. Anybody else on this issue?
Mr. Chairman, just in response to Senator Rothfuss's question, to provide a little context, our district's property and liability insurance is just under $2 million a year. We've seen exponential increases, and of course, it might not add to the value. Nearly $2 million a year for property and liability coverage. And there's a lot of components there. There's cyber liability, there's casualty, there's a lot of different pieces. I will tell you that we're aware of the issues when it comes to outside parties utilizing our facilities and that requirement. And we have been looking and exploring options that might help alleviate some of those pressures with regards to options for someone who might be renting a facility to have the ability to click through to a vendor that would be able to provide that coverage at a lower cost at the time they're registering that facility. We've seen other school districts in other states do something similar, and exploring those type of options that might help alleviate or at least minimize some of that cost for people.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I have two questions. Briefly on that last point, what you mean is having an umbrella organization that already has insurance. Is that the concept?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. Essentially, it'd be a third party that would be.
Yeah, makes sense. But going back to kind of the original content of your insurance policies, so it sounds like you have a third-party non-state insurance provider that you work with on all of these policies. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, Jed, would you characterize your experience as similar to what Mr. Farmer was describing, where you don't have the capacity to really take advantage of the state of Wyoming's government claims, caps, et cetera?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, that's correct. And I would be remiss not to tell you there is a cost factor for us to be, our risk is assessed separately from the pool. And we've been able to use commercial insurance for a lesser cost. So it was part of the motives there too.
Understood, thank you.
Question for any one of you three. So a lot of every couple of years in November, some schools may be used for polling places. Does your insurance company mandate that you attain more insurance for these polling place, to use the gymnasium as a polling place because somebody may slip and fall and sue the school, or is it free of charge?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Biteman, I honestly don't know where our coverage addresses any of the polling work that we do.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Biteman, I think some of that comes back to memorandums of understanding and agreements that you might have with different organizations. Again, I think depending on the school district, they may work with a county organization such as the county clerk or for the county to cover the polling whenever it's happening. It would be similar to the City League basketball group using your gym, and that their coverage would cover the City League basketball. So I think it's not a simple way to deal with it. One of the things that I guess, if you look at different organizations, I'll use Campbell County as an example because I was there when we built the rec center. So part of that rec center was built through the school district with the rec district. Part of that was built by the county. Part of it was built by the rec. The city donated the land. So you have all of those organizations together. but there are in-kind agreements back and forth on who will take care of major maintenance, who will take care of the insurance during the day, who will take care of the insurance when we're running track meets and different things like that. So I think there's a lot of paper out there to cover some of those things back and forth. Doesn't answer your question specifically, but I think it gives you an idea that there are a lot of different things happening in school districts where they're doing that. I know that there are boys and girls clubs that use the different school districts facilities as well, but those are usually covered based on the agreement, the memorandum of understanding or the agreement that they have back and forth.
Cindy Brennan, you had a question?
Yeah.
Understand.
I'll relate it to yours, so. Okay. So my question is that all these players and families, they have to sign a liability waiver. How does that, I mean, you've got the insurance, they have to sign a liability waiver, but yet there's, I mean, this is just kind of confusing to me. Maybe Sherry can, or Senator Simons can do a better job on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It just doesn't, it seems inconceivable to me to think that a liability waiver wouldn't take care of this whole situation. I mean, you waived liability for the school district, and I just have never seen this much bureaucracy surrounding a kid's sports team. You know, my husband used to coach in the league as well, and we've never had any problem using the high school gym. It's shocking to me that this would even be an issue. So how does the liability waiver fit into your scheme of things, and why isn't it sufficient?
Mr. Chairman, all good questions, and we share your frustrations. I think that districts would like for it to be easier on them. It really comes down to the nature of the relationship of the insurer, who insures the school district, and the school district as to what their use, permissible use looks like. And so when you have the 48 different districts, you have potentially 48 different relationships between the district and their insurer. What does your coverage, what does your policy look like? And so if there is the allowance for waivers, or there is the allowance for indemnifications in the policy, then it is the nature of the policy between the insurer and the district that would allow for that. So if you have something that allows in your policy that says that the county can use a facility if it assumes the risk, because at the end of the day, somebody is ultimately going to be liable, and the district is simply seeking to protect its own liability in any of this. So when you talk about waivers of liability, that can again get unfortunately very complicated. Who is waiving liability from whom for what? And so if you're participating in a youth sport and you sign a waiver of liability, you're basically saying, as the youth, I will not sue the organization that has organized the sport for my participation in the sport. But it doesn't necessarily say that I won't sue because of defective facility when somebody else's facility is being used. So that waiver has to be specific to the claims that are potential. And so whether or not the district's insurer would accept the club's waiver of liability or not would be specific to those 48 different cases. So this is where we would welcome a solution that kind of creates the boundaries around how this relationship works, because in the absence of that, it comes down to the insurance market. It is what exists out there in the world of insurance that school districts have to live with. They are liable for things that potentially happen on their facilities, and they have to protect against that liability. How can we, the school district, mitigate our risk. We buy insurance, and then we also have to look at behaviors and practices that mitigate our risk. If we do certain behaviors, then we risk losing our insurance coverage. So if we had more comprehensive statutory language around this whole issue, again, which I believe Senator Rothfuss said is not something that can be done in this bill, that would be very welcome and very helpful, because it now says, here's the rules of the game. Insurance company, if you're going to play with school districts in Wyoming, here's the rules of the game. Here's what you can create your policies around. Here's how you can manage and deal with risk. And that would create more of the boundary of relationship than the general world of insurance right now, which says if something happens, that the owner of the facility becomes liable for that risk of the use of their facility.
To way forward here on this bill. It seems to me that we're getting issues that we can't deal with within either the time available or the scope of the bill as introduced. What I'm going to suggest to the committee is that we go forward with this bill, and we may have some more public testimony before we do, that we add the provision D in the amendment proposed with a effective July 1, 2025 date, so that we say this is going to happen, and that would force a look at it either over the interim and a bill in the general session that could deal with the complexities of this issue, and either as a joint education committee interim or as a project for the School Boards Association to take on with several of the legislators, so that we could get a more comprehensive solution to the broader problem here, which I think may involve looking at both the insurance code and the Governmental Claims Act, neither of which are available in this bill. And frankly, I think on the amendment, I think the language in A is better than the language in the amendment. Because A gives us, as written, gives a pretty clear standard. But that's going to be my suggestion. Any reaction to that kind of a suggestion? Okay, seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, if I dare, it's risky. I mean, it's saying we've got a solution and we hope we can fix it between now and then.
Yeah, we'll
because
have,
the end result then is the denial of use of the facility.
yeah, and I think
so
that will drive
that's what
further
we would,
legislation.
we would not want to see that outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I support us working hard to come up with a solution, but I don't support the drop dead date of changing the D provision. I think that's a dangerous approach where we would effectively have to pass legislation or we shut down all of the facilities. And I don't like the self-inflicted extortion approach to legislation where we create that level of risk. But I do think that everything else, I agree with, that this is a great interim topic for us to spend quite a bit of time on, and we could potentially save millions and millions of dollars for the districts if we can do a better job with insurance.
Hold for a minute and see if there's other public testimony we haven't heard. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Good morning.
Introduce yourselves and proceed.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Matt Snyder. I'm a parent of 4 children under the age of 13 that are involved in multiple different sports groups, clubs, nonprofit organizations in Cheyenne. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sarah DeLay. I'm a parent and involved with Capital City Athletics, a local swim club. Hi, my name is Emily Mears, and I am a student at Central High School and a member on CCA. A member on CCA, the Capital City Athletics swim team.
If I may start, I'll just share a statement that I have prepared. Like I said, I'm speaking as a father of 4 children, 13 years and under, who are very actively involved in multiple sports teams and clubs throughout the year in this city, all of which are nonprofit organizations. Over the last couple of years, as a parent, I have observed the difficulty many of these organizations have had with working with Laramie County School District 1 in gaining access to district facilities and fields, all of which are taxpayer-funded public facilities. Increased financial burdens from unrealistic rental fees have been pushed onto the backs of nonprofit organizations from the school district, putting many organizations in jeopardy of ending their operation and service to the children and family of this city. I'm also aware that this issue goes beyond sports activities and impacts children involved in nonprofit arts programs as well around the state of Wyoming. The financial expectations from the school district seem to be, from a parent's perspective, bloated charges rather than just covering the expenses that the organizations have in utilizing these facilities. Our nonprofit organizations are nonprofit. Most of these organizations are unable to withstand additional burden of higher rental costs for the long term. Additionally, many of these organizations are also groups that are training and equipping young children and teens to perform and compete for the school district itself later on in their years as well. And then finally, just to add and echo the confusion around insurance issues for clubs and organizations, I've, for the last 2 years as a parent, signed multiple insurance waivers that I, as a parent, believed was waiving liability specifically of Laramie County School District number 1, while also knowing and being told and realizing that these clubs and organizations are required to carry additional insurance as well. And so the issue around insurance as a parent is very confusing, and it seems somewhat unnecessary when I'm signing forms that say that I cannot hold Laramie County liable. So on behalf of families like mine, I would urge this committee to approve this bill limiting the imposed fees by the school district around the state, helping our kids and families continue to receive excellent training, education, and development from countless nonprofit organizations who, without this bill protecting these organizations, will likely no longer be able to exist because of the unsustainable financial expectations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, my name is Sarah DeLay. I'm involved with Capital City Athletics, a local swim club. Just to start with the comments earlier that this should be more of a localized issue, it is. These are board policies that are stated that we should not be charged within certain things, but we are being. And across the state, most of those board policies say the same thing. So just to read a statement I have, local nonprofits have been impacted with fees being charged to use the schools. The need for community club involvement is growing exponentially. Municipalities in Wyoming do not have the funds to provide all the facilities for this growing need. They rely heavily on the public-funded school facilities for space. These multi-million-dollar facilities are sold as a community space. Pools specifically are limited. Opportunities for lessons and competitive swimming can be difficult in Wyoming. Pools are expensive. They cost money, even if they sit there empty. Groups have been using facilities at Laramie County School District 1 in particular for decades and were blindsided by back fees and charges. Fees imposed by nonprofits drive up costs for families and limit opportunities for kids. The district should be working with these community groups and not closing the doors and sending them bills. Groups have worked with the school districts again for years with no problem, and now we have to work with lawyers. The school district should work with youth organizations to serve our kids better. Lastly, nonprofit groups work hours beyond what the school district provides and to keep the doors open at all economic levels. When there is no open doors for kids, they choose a different path. The school is one of the easiest places for the kids to find these small clubs and nonprofits at a low cost. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Again, my name is Emily Mears, and I'm a student at Central, and I am also a member on the Capital City Athletics. And I'm here to basically speak on behalf of me and my fellow classmates and teammates, and basically advocate for the reduced fees. And just by saying like it promotes kind of, is that, no, you're good. Is that better for you? Okay, sorry. So I would just like to say that like, firstly, the access to these facilities promotes kind of a sense of inclusivity and community, and it allows that all students participate in extracurricular activities, regardless of whether or not they are officially affiliated with the school's sports teams. And it helps maximize the use of the resources and encourage cooperation between the different groups within the school. And it provides that club teams with access to better facilities can improve the quality of their training and ultimately enhance their performance. And finally, it allows club sport teams to use school facilities to foster a sense of pride and support for these teams within the broader school community. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you all very much. Anybody else here present who want to speak? Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Committee, we'll back on the bill. My instinct is I want to find a way forward in the bill. We can pass the bill as it comes to us, where the charges can't exceed the incremental cost incurred by the district. That standard is found on page 2, lines 10 through 11, and then you have some requirements below that. That essentially finesses the insurance issue, which is quite real. We can put in a provision that they can't require insurance, and I'm a little nervous of that. I don't mind putting that requirement in with a late effective date, but some of the committee members don't agree with that. Is there some thought that we can say that you can require waivers as an alternative to that, and see if that would work? What's the pleasure of the committee on this? Informally, how do we want to work this? Senator Brennan, it's your bill.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I'd be happy to just move forward with the bill as is and then look at the insurance piece. I think that's a large problem that we need to look at in the interim.
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand why a waiver wouldn't work. If we were going to put D in, because I know how expensive these little policies can be, if you inserted in D in the amendment with an appropriate waiver, not require the person or entity renting the facility to obtain an insurance policy. Because if you've got a waiver, that should cover you. And we know we live in a society obsessed with litigation, but we can't protect from everything. There's inherent risk in any sport or any rodeo sport or anything that you do. We can't be the savior of everything. So I think with an appropriate waiver, but it would be up to Senator Brennan how she wants to proceed. That might be a way forward if she does want to address the insurance portion.
What do you think?
The insurance company, I think we heard testimony that the waiver is just not going to work at this time for the insurance. I wish that it would, but I don't think it's going to. So I want to either make this an interim topic or work on it in the interim, because I think it's big and we need to get it right. And I don't want a sports club that thinks that they're covered by a waiver and then something happens and they find out that they're not covered by a waiver.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with the bringer of the bill to a certain extent, but we've only heard one side. We've only heard opinions from the school representatives. And, you know, we had a lengthy discussion about how are we going to render first aid and give Band-Aids out and make it so complicated and convoluted that we couldn't even make a decision a couple days ago. They're very good at making things very convoluted. I don't think this is that convoluted. I think this is pretty common sense. I think we can do this. I don't think it's going to make the sky fall, and I wouldn't oppose the insurance language here with a waiver like Senator Steinmetz said. I think this is an easy fix. And, you know, I wouldn't just take what one side says is the gospel. We haven't heard the other side. So
Just proceed with the bill.
just proceed. We can walk and chew gum.
Okay. With that, Senator Brennan, do you want to not offer the amendment and just proceed with the bill as it stands? Okay. Do you give us a do pass motion on the bill?
Yeah, I recommend we do pass
Pass.
this bill, please. Senate File
Okay.
84.
Okay. Motion is do pass on the bill. Senator Ruffus.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question that we really haven't discussed, and that is, as written, this applies more broadly than I think it's intended. And I'm imagining a business, for example, wanting to use school district property and wanting to rent school district property, and it's a for-profit business. And I don't think that's what this bill is anticipating, but as I read it, it would require the school district to provide access to even a for-profit corporation that wants to use it at the same fee schedule, based on the C provision, be uniform for the same or similar use of the property as they would for the Boys and Girls Club, for example. And I think the intent is to make sure that there's access to all of the student groups and the public that want to use it. So I guess I would ask do we want to try and remedy that, or do we want it to really be a uniform payment schedule, regardless of whether you're a for-profit business that's going to effectively sell access to the space during periods of time when you rent it, so to speak, or do we want to ensure that it's really just students have, through their groups like we just heard about, having access to it? And that's an open question.
Any rental fees charged to nonprofit and volunteer organizations, or you could put some kind of qualification in there like that. That actually they could, I think with this language, they could still forbid any, this isn't requiring them to approve any use. This is saying if they're charging fees, that's the limitation of fees.
Mr.
So I
Chairman,
think they could control that by just saying where I go.
I think the C provision calls that into question. And that's what kind of inspired me to wonder about this a little bit. I think you're right up until the C paragraph, and then the C paragraph sort of suggests the equal treatment for all, so everyone would have to have access. Maybe I'm wrong, but Senator Brennan, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I want to support that.
I think they could charge something different because it says same or similar use of the property. So I think with that same or similar, you could, we're saying if you're a nonprofit, we want this similar. If you're not, I think we're saying same or similar.
Yeah, I don't think C gets us in trouble, because if you're using it for a profit purpose, that is different from the volunteer organizations we're talking about.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, so you might be able to deny it, I agree, but again, plain reading of the language. Any rental fees charged by the district for use of school district property shall, and then it's incremental cost only, be supported by an itemized statement, and be uniform for the same or similar use of the property. I understand everybody wants it to read like we want to interpret it, but the language of the law doesn't seem to say that.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to discriminate against the users. All of our community members are paying taxes on these public buildings. And so whoever wants to use them should should have the ability to use them without being gouged, because they're already paying, in my county, Goshen County, 46 mills for schools, for community colleges, for our school buildings. And so if we're going to continue to fund schools at the rate we're funding them, we should have access to use them, whether we're a business entity, whether we're a nonprofit, whomever. And so I just would resist going down that road. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick response on that. And then I'll be done with it. So those for-profit companies, a lot of them buy buildings to offer athletics, and so they have a lease, they have extensive expenses. That's how the business world operates. The fact that I could come in as one of those entities, and instead of buying my own facility, as the corporate world tends to operate, I basically just book the school facility at the marginal cost differential. And then I don't have to pay the cost of facilities because I've got the cheapest institution in town. And then I sell access to it over that period of time is a great business model that is inequitable and is not good for the commercial world. So.
I think we're seeing things go bump in the night there, because I think the school
Okay.
district can put a stop to it by saying we're just not going to lease to you.
Well, they could now, but we're
And I think
passing a statute that says shall.
Yeah,
All right, Mr. Chairman.
okay. We're due up there at 9:30.
Yep.
Yep. Any further discussion of the bill? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Chairman, on Senate File 84, school facilities use fees, Senator Beitman. Aye. Senator Brennan.
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss.
No.
Senator Steinmetz.
Aye.
Chairman Scott.
Aye.
4 aye, 1 no.
Okay, that bill's passed. School Boards Association, I think you've shown us a problem in the whole insurance area. Let's think about how we're going to get that resolved, because the public is going to demand to use these facilities, has always been able to use them. Heck, I can even remember using the high school pool as a kid growing up in Casper. They had it open to the public at times. And I think we need to find a solution. I think there is a solution somewhere in the interaction between our Governmental Claims Act and our insurance code. We need to figure out how to deal with this. Okay, with that, committee, we'll have an amendment worked up on the charter schools. We'll deal with that first thing Monday morning. And then we'll proceed from there.